So
there you go.
Right.
I don't have to share it, but yeah, I want to get recorded.
Yeah. Okay. So so Jesus says, be careful. I don't come to unite, I come to divide. I come to bring the sword. I will set father against son, mother against daughter, da da da. So when he returns, he's coming to divide. And the reason for the division is, so this is a repeat of what, so we currently live in Babylon the Great. So when Babel got, the language got confused, they got spread across the face of the earth. And what has now happened is that we've built Babel everywhere. And I think I've told you this before, that the CBD of a modern city is the new, is Babel confused. So instead of a single tower, you have each one glorifying their own name. So each skyscraper's got the name of its entity on top, trying to glorify it. That is the pattern of Babel.
Did you say CBD?
CBD, Central Business District. So the medieval city had the cathedral in the center. So the focus of the medieval city was the godly image. And we have now kicked the church and the cathedral out. So cities now get developed around the Central Business District. We worship money and making a name for yourself. All right, that is what we currently worship. That is, and this is not just the West, this is the entire world. There's one city plan that is being built everywhere. And that, with the exception of Neom, is an attempt to break that model. The line, they haven't built it yet, but they, the earth moving equipment's in, and that city, Neom, will never get built, because once the CHE gets unveiled, that's the end of all city plans, and this is the one that will. This is, remember getting Jason's opinion, Jason's theology. But so the current modern city is Babel confused. So instead of single tower working with one aim, it's individual big billionaires and corporations building individual towers, glorifying making a name for themselves. So if you reread Babel, they try to make a name for, they were trying to glorify their own names and not glorify God's name. That was a wrong pattern number one. So you're supposed to glorify a name, but you're supposed to glorify God's name. They said, no, we're going to glorify our own name. You're supposed to build on a mountain. They built on the plain. And most modern cities get built on a plain next to a river or a trading port close to water, so that we can trade and make money. So the purpose of cities have always been for trade. Now, if you go to Ecclesiastes, there was a time for everything under the sun. Trade was important. It was necessary. And Babel was necessary. Babylon was necessary in order that technology could advance, so that we could build the CHE. So the CHE is the metamorphosis from the old city into the heaven, the city of man into the city of heaven. This is Jason's theology. But so what the CHE is one tower many towers integrated into one tower, right? Whereas a CBD is just a bunch of towers trying to glorify their own name. That's Babylon. That's Babel. Now, Christ, when he's coming back, so if you read the prophets, Isaiah specifically, Jeremiah talks about it a fair bit, and then Revelation, you just do a search for Babylon in Revelation and destruction of cities. The Babylon is going to fall. Christ is coming to divide Babylon so that it can fall. However, this fall is going to take 1,000 years. This is not going to be Sodom and Gomorrah with overnight destruction. This is a 1,000-year destructive this transition process from one system of living into another system of living. That's the 1,000-year kingdom. The first CHE that gets built is the judge. It's the ideal. And once people see that, there'll be a managed transition into the new cities. So there's Jason's eschatology and theology in a nutshell, and in a very physicalist system. So the Holy Spirit cannot. The purpose of the Holy Spirit is not yet to join people together. It is to bring Babylon, to create an awareness that the old way of living is done. We can't do it anymore. And you're seeing that spirit right across the world. Man is wrecking the environment, global warming, etc., etc. So the spirit of the age is to bring this system of living to an end, and God's answer is to offer a new way of living.
It makes for a good story.
Yeah. It makes for a good story. And we've put $1,000 on the line to have that story tested.
Yeah, I have to set out the rules for the competition to disprove the CHE.
Yeah,
I want to do it right. So
yeah. Now, I think if I can offer this thought occurred to me when you said that earlier in the talk.
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave. This is just a thought. So instead of having a defined timeline, I think if the rules can be something like, you and I will engage with who on a forum. So we'll set up a forum, maybe a Discord server, or on your Discord server, we'll set up a forum where we can have chat and video conversations. Yeah. Where whoever, so if anyone can persuade us through demonstration with the physics that there's a great flaw, and we, and this is the difficult part, and we agree that that's, we can't rebut that. So there has, and that's the thing. So if we can't rebut it, we effectively therefore agreeing, we're conceding, right? So that's the tricky part. But you don't want to have a time frame. You don't want the competition to run for X period of time. And what we will do is anyone who attempts to shoot it down, if they do so in the spirit where we will perhaps list every attempt to shoot it down in good spirit, to say, look, this was the argument here, and we can either, we don't have to declare the person's name or offer the argument, and then we'll come up with just a list of attempted debunks, and either the person can agree to have their name there or not, doesn't matter, but just the debunking attempt, nameless, just to keep it alive and active, but ultimately we have to concede, right? That we have to agree that it's been blown, it has been disproven.
Right, and I mean, it would be pretty awkward, for example, if someone with like a lot of credentials, mastery, and a bunch of fills came in and attempted to disprove us, and we said, no, you're wrong, right? But we would be willing to, for example, go and have, especially with someone like that, a recorded conversation where we can go point by point and things like that.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure Ira would be happy to adjudicate those videos. Yep. And I could certainly look, this whole spiritual side, I haven't mentioned any of that to Ira, and I'm not banding his name around. But in terms of this rebuttal, this might be a, I'd invite Ira to be the judge, or ask him if he wants to put someone else's name forward who's a further arm's length away,
right,
to act as the adjudicator.
Well, yeah, I think the rules are something like, we would want to make sure that there was a submission of the criticism, right? There's a claim, for example, that, hey, you should give me $1,000 because this is why it won't work. And then, so you would have submissions, and then there would be basically this process by which we would go through and investigate submissions. And as ideally, at the end of the day, the person who put forth the submission would say, I was wrong, or we would say, we're wrong.
Yep.
We would like to get to that point, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't get to that point. I know from personal experience.
Yeah.
But we would want to make sure that, we want to make sure that, though, that I would say proof of work is essential. Like, we'd want to essentially prove that we investigated this claim, and and we could even document that investigation. And I say we, it's like, I don't really want you, like, I would like to be able to investigate it myself and be able to show the person making the claim that they're wrong and why. And then it would be nice, for example, to eventually have volunteers or experts who would be able to do the same. But yeah, there would be submissions that people go into a queue, and then people who are knowledgeable of the system would come in and engage, do the proof of work, that there was engagement. And then I think, like you said, there would be documentation of this proof of work, such that, eventually you should be able to respond to someone and say, oh, this has already been disproved. You made a similar claim to this other person, and here's where we documented our attempt to teach why they were wrong, right?
Yeah, sure. And I don't know how big a deal $1,000 is to anyone, and are we going to get people who are going to just want the money and therefore badger us and so you've got to give some thought as to how.
Well, there's an amount of time that we were willing to put into it per week, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would set expectations like that. It's like, I have a full-time job, right?
Yep.
And there's a certain number of people. It's just maybe you and I, for example, trying to, and we really want to know if we're wrong. We don't think we are. And then we're willing to put in a certain amount of time per week, looking at people's claims, right?
Yep. Yeah. If you can disavow us, if you can demonstrate that we're living in cloud cuckoo land, we'd be appreciative by giving you $1,000. Right. That's the spirit of this competition. Is that if we're wrong, we really would like to know.
So, and here's an interesting point.
And we'd thank you with $1,000. So that's a good faith. It's a good faith, invitation.
And I imagine there would be people who point at things that hasn't been thought of before, right? And so there would be some problem that we haven't addressed, but then there could be a solution to that. So there could, it'd be nice. Yeah, that's very helpful, right? When people say, here's a problem in the system that you haven't addressed. And the issue here is there's going to be thousands of those, because, on the website, there's only so much information there. We haven't built the thing, and there's going to be problems like, well, what kind of bolt do you use? There's all kinds of problems, right?
So we need to be very specific. So I think we mentioned this before, because Ira is a skeptic as to, Jacob said this thing's never going to get built, right. Which is what a Jew would say, because this thing is going to prove that Jesus was the Messiah. So Jacob has to say that, although he didn't know it had anything to do with Jesus being the Messiah. He still, as a Jew, he had to say this thing's never going to get built. Sorry, I just had a private chuckle about that at the time, because I just said, Jacob has to say that.
And that's the religious aspect that we're going to share as well.
So all we're interested in are the thermodynamic and fluid mechanical principles. Concerns of cost, not a concern. Engineering issues, unless you can prove that a structure can't be built at height, well, guess what? The Burj Khalifa stands, and the Jeddah Tower is going to be a mile high. So we know structures of this height are architecturally and engineering possible. So we just point to those. Sorry, etc., etc. So so we're interested in questions of heat flow. Will the air rise? Will the water circulate? Will it get cooler towards the center? So the big claims we're making: will water condense out of the sky as a result of these fluid mechanical principles? In other words, do the hydraulic and airflow movements occur as claimed? And if not, we'd like to know why not.
And does the competition include the underground thermal energy system as well, or just the above ground convective heat engine portion?
Yeah, I don't. I think so. The underground claims make our above ground thermodynamics easier, because if they say, "Oh, there's not enough heat," today, "Oh, well, we've already counted for that. We're bleeding a bit of geothermal heat in there just to make the structure less tall and more efficient."
Right.
So although I see the underground heat as being primarily being used for the power generation, it can. So I've got no idea how much heat you can sustain. In other words, how big a area you have to mine for heat in order to. In other words, I don't know how many gigawatts of heat it can sustainably be extracted from an underground tunnels 2.5 k's down. I don't know. I simply don't have that knowledge. All I know is that there's a lot of heat down there, but I can't quantify it.
Yeah.
So we need geologists.
Yeah. Another question I've had, and I'm not saying you've made the claim, but it's like is there a technology that can extract moisture from the air more efficiently than a CHE? Like that's a question that I had raised to me at some point, because in their mind they're like, yeah, there's these technologies that you can use to pull water out of the air, and then the question was, well, is that better than the CHE?
Yeah. So I mean, so what the CHEs, what we're claiming is that we are adding no fossil or solar energy, in other words, but we are talking about, so solar energy is interesting because the energy source is from the sun. So we're harvesting energy from the sun, but we have to do a capital outlay to build the infrastructure, be it solar photovoltaic, solar thermal, or photovoltaics, right? And that's a capital layout in equipment that has a limited lifespan. Now we're doing the same thing to geothermal energy. We are boring into the ground, which is a capital outlay, to extract heat from the Earth's crust. So that's a gray area, because the heat's free. So now so solar energy can be used, but guess what? The problem with solar energy is it's 8 hours a day, less, depending on where you are in terms of actual useful harvestable daylight hours on average through a 365-day cycle. Geothermal is 24/7.
So I mean, if it'd be nice to prove that this device would not work, that's where we provide the reward. But then there's still questions about, for example, the economics of it's basically a city, right? The economics of building this city, because it's not just providing clean water, it's also providing energy and housing and the things that can come about from that.
So how about this as an invitation? as a tack on, you know, for all those skeptics out there who, you know, Jacob said this thing will never be built. Any skeptics who've come to accept that this thing can work, right? But have concerns about practical implementation, here's an invitation for you to highlight your concerns and bring any solutions that you might, you know, and any ideas that you have in order to mitigate them would be, you know, because if this thing can't be disproved, we want to know how to make the best possible CH, you know, so therefore any practical concerns you have, bring them to the table. So be, you know, like an open invitation to be part of the process. That's us, you know, saying genuinely, this CHE is going to be a mega project that is going to require, I mean, Gavin and Jason, you know, can't do it. We need thousands of people. And in fact, we need millions of people to contribute in some small way to get this to happen. Yeah, and I'm talking about sort of financial donations down the track from people who want to see this happen and are willing to donate their money, to think that this free water project and whatever else you might believe about it might be something worth donating some of your money towards.
Yeah. Well, I do think I would be interested in treating the thermal energy as a battery power source, and then raising the question of what is the amounts of energy needed to produce this amount of water using a CHE compared with, and I'm not talking about the capital investment, I'm just talking about operationally, you have the battery, how much water can be produced with this battery if you use a CHE compared with this off-the-shelf solution. And then to me, that would be an interesting page on the website to say, well, here's the comparison as far as efficiencies go, because I suspect that because we're using lapse rate and physics and gravity, right? We're making use of nature. I suspect it'll be quite efficient. There might be some technologies that also do that, but it's just at a smaller scale, right? And you could compare them, and then at that point you could then say, well, here's some off-the-shelf technologies that exist today, and then you could go in and say, well, here's the ancillary benefits of using a CHE, is you now have housing, right? You now have, you know, maybe a method of transportation, a method of growing. Those are like ancillary benefits, whereas with this other off-the-shelf technology, it doesn't do those things, right? So I like that kind of, it's like an economic analysis at some point.
And then guess what? That Sabine Hossenfelder, it just struck me that Sabine Hossenfelder video that I responded to is perfect. Because if we're saying the CHE is the city of the future, and she's saying that in 400 years' time, we're going to have a waste heat problem, right? So whatever energy systems we are utilizing, if humanity is going to keep developing, we've got a waste heat problem down the track. So this has been sort of calculated and foreseen. The CHE just gets rid of that. So you can say, and for those people that are worried about the long-term sustainability, guess what? This problem that has been highlighted here is now, or is addressed upfront.
I get you.
It's a non-issue.
So you could, like, I was just looking on at efficiency of systems as far as, and limited with just a few functions like water production and then housing. But if you were looking at other concerns like global warming, global cooling, things like that, you could, that's whenever you would say, oh, well, this not only does it produce water, provide housing, it also addresses these other concerns that a lot of people are worried about.
So
it'd be nice if it ticked all the boxes, right? It's the most efficient for water. It's the most efficient city for housing. And then it also clicks these boxes for other people, like who say are concerned about global warming or global cooling or things like that.
Yep. So although the CHE is using energy, just like everything else that does work has to use energy. So what I'll do is I'll throw onto the Discord with a few comments. Is Sabine Hossenfelder's things. I'll put it into the CHE Discord general section.
Okay.
Just so that we've got it there as a reference. And then, so this is Michael Heron and I. So that previous patent we did, which was sort of the prelude to the CHE, which I think I mentioned to you in the past, is that thing was a waste heat scavenger to make reverse cycle air conditioners, which we use as heat pumps, more efficient. So literally scavenging low grade waste heat to make them a bit more efficient. And what the CHE does is it literally runs off waste environmental heat that is going out to space. It's extracting the last bit of energy from there by diverting it into water and bypassing the lapse rate. It's taking that last bit of waste heat, which is heading out to space at night anyway, and it's turning that into useful work. So it's literally a waste heat scavenging system. So it's using energy that we've to date found no useful purpose for.
Right. And it's also why you've mentioned that it could be the technology could be connected to existing like cooling towers, for example.
Correct.
So
Making more those things more efficient. Yeah.
Right, because you can scavenge that waste heat. And then it changes and then it reduces the amount of energy needed to do that work that's done by the cooling tower.
And plus, as a side benefit, it gives you some fresh water as well.
Right, which is the thing I'm most
which is
about.
yeah. So and that, those were all part of our early discussions, which is sort of we've forgotten about, but that is going to come up in our rebuttals to people's concerns about the CHE. So I'll put that into the Discord, if not tonight, tomorrow.
Okay. I'm gonna try to do some exercise, but pretty soon. And then just to bring it right back to where we were when I started recording. I said it was a good story. It's because it seems like you could, like, when I try to write a story, I end up trying to like solve all the problems and have a peaceful that shows a world that's full of peace. And it's just wouldn't be an interesting story. People wouldn't read it. But that's why I say it makes for a good story. But the thing that makes a story interesting is the pain and suffering, which is I guess that disappoints me sometimes. But I mean, it is the way we are. I guess we like a story that has some kind of pain and suffering in it.
Well, it's our lived experience, right? And it's any story that ignores pain and suffering isn't dealing with our with our view of reality.
It's just the Tower of Babel. It seems like a clever way to have a system of control. You confuse the language, so you control the people so that they don't become gods, right? And similarly in Eden, you make sure they don't eat from the tree of knowledge so they don't become gods. And it's like, so there's a system of control that's holding humans down. And to match it up with your story, your religion is that it's holding humans down such that we create the technology like the CHE to then have some revelation, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the plan that was set up from the very beginning, was a city that produces water. I mean, that is an unarguable pattern in the Bible, right? So a city out of which water flows.
Yeah, I guess I can't get past this. This feels so vulgar. It feels like I'm violated, that humans are being violated. Right?
No. So the problem was we were violated by the angels that sinned. That's who violated us.
But even like it's like the angels are subjects, and like in the story of Job, they have the council, and God permits the Elohim and the adversary Satan to go and just plague Job and kill his children and take away all his wealth and ruin his health. And it's a violation. It's vulgar. But the thing is when you say that that's what's happened throughout history, it's not just Job at that point in my mind. It's every human. It's Paul Vanderklay, right? It's me. It's all of us are. All right. I guess that's the sign that I said too much. I'm going to turn off my video. You want to try turning off your video?
Yeah, I'll turn my video off.
Yeah, it may have got recorded to the cloud, but yeah, I was just saying that it feels like a violation that we are all we're having our buttons pushed and our strings pulled such that the story plays out a certain way. The cost is pain and suffering. The reward is like a nice story, and maybe like the resurrection of the dead, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, there is the reward is restoration of all things. So it's like it's like any story, except this is a story unlike any other. Is that there is redemption at the end. So it does have a happy ending for everyone. For everyone that wants a happy ending, it's available.
Yeah, I think the difference between our stories is that you see the CHE as kind of like the turning point technology, which then where all of a sudden you'll have the revelation and the resurrection. Whereas I'm wondering that it's the technology, that there will be a technology that has to be built so that we can have the resurrection. It won't be that the creator operates through us, by us, and allows us to discover the physics and the technology by which we perform the miracles. So that's the difference. That we will be responsible for the resurrection. Like we will be responsible for the technology.
We're the agents, and without our consent, it doesn't happen.
Right.
But if we don't consent and it doesn't happen, the suffering will then be even worse and on us, if you know what I mean. So it's
So you're saying the CHE is kind of like a revelation that will encourage people to consent. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So then for the first time, so I'm not going to say that the full mystery will be revealed, but this is a massive mystery revelation that unlocks biblical understanding in all sorts of interesting ways. Okay. But yeah, so I'm building up on the on what's going to go on the website, that this is I think I told you this before, this is the sign of the Son of Man. The CHE is the sign of the Son of Man. And that's what it is in Matthew 24. This is the thing that kicks off the kingdom. I don't know how else to put it. And that sign is such a big deal, and it is so often referenced in the Bible, not as the sign of the Son of Man. Jesus was the first and only time that he coined that phrase. In Isaiah and everything else, it's the banner that God will raise. It's the same thing. A banner is a sign that will be raised.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Anyway, you need to go and exercise with your wife. And
right.
I just want to thank you for your lifting my spirits. You did a great job.
Well, and we can also blame Grimgris and Nechama. I listened to them, and they did a prayer, and I was reminded. Beautiful. I was reminded to be grateful. So
well, thank you, and thank them from me, because you've lifted my spirits. So well done.
Well, that's great. Yep. All right, Jason. Thank you. Is it cool if I share this one on my channel as well?
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
Okay. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your walk.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.